The dark water of Loch Ness holds secrets that have terrified the people of the Scottish Highlands for generations. This vast body of freshwater contains more water than all the lakes in England and Wales combined. It is a deep and jagged scar running through the Great Glen fault line. The water is pitch black due to the high peat content from the surrounding hills. Visibility underwater is almost zero, which creates a perfect hiding place for something massive and ancient. Locals have always whispered about the strange shapes that break the surface during the twilight hours. The silence of the loch is often broken by unexplained disturbances that ripple across the glassy surface. It is a place where history and folklore merge into a terrifying reality that science struggles to explain. The legend of the beast begins long before the invention of photography or the arrival of tourism. In the year 565, Saint Columba made his way through the land of the Picts. He arrived at the River Ness to find a group of locals burying a man who had been dragged underwater. The tribesmen claimed a water beast had snatched the swimmer and mauled him to death with savage ferocity. Columba sent his follower, named Luin Maku Min, into the water to provoke the creature. The beast rose from the depths with a great roar and an open mouth. Columba made the sign of the cross and commanded the beast to go back. This ancient encounter set the stage for 1,500 years of fear and speculation surrounding the dark waters. For centuries, the local people avoided the shores of the loch after the sun went down. They spoke of the water kelpie, which is a shape-shifting spirit that inhabits the lochs of Scotland. This malevolent entity would often appear as a beautiful horse to lure weary travelers onto its back. Once the victim was mounted, the hide of the kelpie would become adhesive and trap them. The beast would then plunge into the deepest part of the water to drown and devour its prey. These stories were not told as fairy tales, but as survival warnings to children living near the edge of the water. The association between the loch and death was established in the minds of the Highlanders long before the modern monster hunt began. Everything changed in the year 1933 when a new road was constructed along the northern shore of the loch. This project required blasting away tons of rock and clearing ancient forests that had obscured the view for centuries. The construction disrupted the quiet isolation of the Great Glen and perhaps disturbed something sleeping beneath the surface. The vibration of dynamite and falling rock echoed through the underwater canyons. Drivers and workmen began to report seeing a massive creature rolling in the water. The road allowed the outside world to gaze upon the loch with a frequency that had never occurred before. The awakening of the monster coincided with the intrusion of modern machinery into a primal landscape. One of the most chilling encounters occurred in July of 1933, involving George Spicer and his wife. They were driving their car along the road, between doors and foyers, late in the afternoon. Suddenly, a grotesque creature emerged from the undergrowth, roughly 200 yards ahead of them. It had a long neck that undulated like a scenic railway arch, and a large, ponderous body. The animal lurched across the road and vanished into the loch, leaving a trail of broken bracken. The Spicers described it as a prehistoric abomination that seemed out of place in the modern world. Their testimony ignited a media firestorm that would consume the globe. The creature was no longer a myth, but a physical reality blocking the road. The description given by the Spicers terrified the public because it suggested the beast could leave the water. It was an amphibious nightmare that could stalk the land as well as the deep. Panic began to spread among the local communities, who feared for their livestock and children. The Inverness Courier published the story and coined the term Loch Ness Monster for the first time. Reporters from London descended upon the Highlands hoping to capture the beast on film. They interviewed anyone who claimed to have seen a hump or a neck breaking the surface. The atmosphere around the loch transformed from peaceful solitude to a circus of anxiety and anticipation. Every floating log or wave became a potential sighting of the Leviathan. Arthur Grant was a veterinary student who claimed to have nearly collided with the creature on his motorcycle in 1934. He described seeing a small head attached to a long neck with large eyes that reflected his headlight beams. The beast had flippers rather than legs, and a long tail that ended in a blunt point. Grant claimed the creature panicked and splashed back into the water near a Briachin. He produced a sketch that looked remarkably like a plesiosaur, which is a marine reptile thought to be extinct for 65 million years. This sighting solidified the popular image of the monster as a prehistoric survivor. The idea that a dinosaur was living in Scotland captured the imagination of the entire world. The most famous image of the monster emerged later in 1934 and is known as the surgeon's photograph. It was reportedly taken by Robert Kenneth Wilson, who was a gynecologist from London. The image shows a long neck and head rising gracefully from the rippled water. For decades, this photograph was considered the absolute proof that a large, unknown animal inhabited Loch Ness. Skeptics were silenced by the credentials of the man who took the photo. It became the icon of the mystery and appeared in books and documentaries across the globe. However, the shadow of deception hung over the image from the very beginning. Many wondered how a doctor happened to have his camera ready at the perfect moment. While the public focused on the biological mystery, a darker narrative was unfolding on the southern shore of the loch. Boleskine House stands on a hillside overlooking the water and has a sinister reputation. It was once the home of the infamous occultist Aleister Crowley during the early 20th century. Crowley performed a grueling ritual known as the Abramelin operation at the house. The ritual was designed to summon guardian angels, but also required the summoning of demons. Local legend states that Crowley failed to banish the demons he had summoned before leaving the property. These malevolent spirits were said to haunt the house and the surrounding landscape. Some paranormal researchers believe the dark energy from Boleskine feeds the monster. The connection between the occult and the monster adds a psychological layer to the mystery. Aleister Crowley believed in the existence of magical beasts and the thinning of the veil between worlds. The location of Boleskine House was chosen specifically for its isolation and spiritual power. Residents of the area reported strange lights and sounds coming from the house long after Crowley departed. Tragedies seemed to befall those who lived there, including suicides and financial ruin. The house eventually burned down in 2 separate fires, leaving only a shell. The charred ruins still overlook the loch, like a skull watching the water. The proximity of this accursed ground to the sightings is a detail that unnerves many investigators. In the 1950s, the search for the monster became more organized and desperate. Constance White published a book titled More Than a Legend, which cataloged eyewitness accounts. She argued that the sheer number of sightings from reliable people could not be dismissed as mass hysteria. Her work inspired a new generation of hunters who treated the search as a military operation. They used binoculars and telephoto lenses to scan the water from dawn until dusk. The Loch Ness Investigation Bureau was formed to monitor the loch with mobile camera vans. The obsession took a toll on the hunters, who spent years staring at the gray water. The psychological strain of waiting for a monster that never appears broke many men. Tim Dinsdale was an aeronautical engineer who dedicated his life to finding the truth. In 1960, he filmed a reddish object moving through the water near Foyers. The film shows a hump traveling at a speed that Dinsdale calculated was too fast for a boat. The object leaves a distinct V-shaped wake that differs from the wake of a surface vessel. Experts from the Royal Air Force analyzed the footage and concluded the object was likely animate. This piece of evidence remains one of the most compelling arguments for the existence of the creature. Dinsdale sacrificed his career and reputation to pursue the beast. He believed he had seen a living animal that deserved protection rather than persecution. The murky water of Loch Ness acts as a curtain that hides everything beneath 3 feet of depth. The peat particles suspended in the water block sunlight and create a perpetual gloom. Divers who have ventured into the loch describe the sensation of descending into ink. At 50 feet, the light is gone completely, and the temperature drops to near freezing. The bottom of the loch is a flat plain of silt that creates blinding clouds when disturbed. It is a hostile environment where human senses are rendered useless. The sonar becomes the only eye that can see in the dark. This isolation makes the loch the perfect sanctuary for a creature that wants to remain undiscovered. In the 1970s, an American lawyer named Robert Rines brought advanced technology to the hunt. He led a team from the Academy of Applied Science that used underwater strobe photography and sonar. In 1972, his equipment captured an image that shocked the scientific community. The photo appeared to show a large diamond-shaped flipper attached to a rough body. The appendage was estimated to be several feet long, and unlike any known fish fin, computer enhancement revealed details that suggested a solid biological structure. This image was published in Nature magazine and gave credibility to the plesiosaur theory. It seemed that technology had finally pierced the veil of the dark water. Rines returned in 1975 with even more sophisticated equipment to capture the beast. His underwater camera captured a terrifying image that became known as the Gargoyle Head. The photo shows a grotesque face with horns or protrusions and an open mouth. It looks like a demon emerging from the silt and staring directly at the lens. Skeptics argued it was a rotting tree stump or a rock formation on the bottom. However, the resemblance to a living head was uncanny and deeply disturbing. The image fueled the nightmares of those who believed the monster was something supernatural. It suggested that the creature was not a graceful dinosaur, but a monstrous aquatic aberration. The psychological impact of the Gargoyle Head photo signaled a shift in the tone of the hunt. The creature was no longer just a scientific curiosity, but a source of genuine fear. The features in the photo looked almost human, but distorted by the pressure and darkness. It played into the ancient fears of the water horse and the demons of the deep. People began to wonder if they really wanted to find what was down there. The mystery had a face now, and it was a face of malice. The Loch Ness monster had evolved from a tourist attraction into a creature of horror. The lines between biological reality and nightmare began to blur. Operation Deep Scan was launched in 1987 to sweep the entire loch with a curtain of sonar. A fleet of 24 boats moved in a line abreast formation, scanning the depths. The operation was massive and covered every inch of the deep water channel. The sonar operators reported 3 strong contacts that could not be explained. These targets were large and moving at depth, and they were stronger than the echoes of a seal. The contacts were deep in the water column, where known fish do not typically school in such density. The fleet turned back to investigate, but the contacts had vanished into the abyss. The creature had evaded the net once again. The failure of Operation Deep Scan to produce a body did not disprove the existence of the monster. It only highlighted the immense volume of water and the complexity of the underwater terrain. The loch has steep walls that contain caves and overhangs where a large animal could hide. The sonar beams can be deflected by the thermal layers in the water, known as the thermocline. A creature adapted to this environment would know how to use the terrain to avoid detection. The intelligence of the quarry seemed to match the persistence of the hunters. It was a game of cat and mouse played in a three-dimensional labyrinth of darkness. There are stories told by local fishermen that never make it into the newspapers or documentaries. They speak of boats being bumped from below by something with immense power. They talk about sudden waves on calm days that nearly capsize their small vessels. One story involves a diver who was working on the weird underwater walls of the loch. He signaled frantically to be pulled up and surfaced in a state of absolute terror. He refused to speak about what he saw and vowed never to dive in fresh water again. His hair was said to have turned white from the shock of the encounter. These anecdotes carry the weight of trauma rather than the excitement of discovery. The depth of Loch Ness is officially recorded as 754 feet. However, there are rumors of a crevice that goes much deeper than the charts indicate. Some believe this abyss connects to the sea through a subterranean tunnel system. This theory would explain how a large predator could enter and exit the loch to feed. It would also explain why the creature is seen so rarely and why sonar fails to track it. The idea of a hollow earth connection adds a layer of cosmic horror to the story. The loch might not be a closed system, but a doorway to a hidden world beneath the crust. The monster could be a guardian of this passage. The winter in the Scottish Highlands brings a desolate beauty and a crushing silence to the loch. The tourists leave, and the water becomes a gray mirror, reflecting the snow-capped peaks. This is the time when the locals say the beast is most active. The short days and long nights provide ample cover for a creature of the dark. The wind howls down the great glen and whips the water into a frenzy. Standing on the shore in December, one feels a profound sense of insignificance. The landscape is indifferent to human life, and the cold is biting. It is easy to believe in monsters when the world is stripped of comfort and light. In recent years, scientists have turned to environmental DNA, or eDNA, to solve the puzzle. They took water samples from various depths and locations to sequence the genetic material. The results showed a significant amount of eel DNA in the water. This led to the theory that the monster might be a giant eel. Eels are known to grow to large sizes and can live for decades in isolation. A mutated eel could explain the long neck and the serpentine movement described by witnesses. The thought of a 20-foot eel writhing in the black water is just as terrifying as a dinosaur. It transforms the monster from a reptile into a slimy predator. The giant eel theory does not satisfy everyone because eels do not typically surface with a head and neck. The descriptions of the monster often include a hump or a series of humps. This points towards a mammal or a reptile rather than a fish or an eel. The debate continues to rage between the believers and the skeptics. Each new theory tries to fit the square peg of the evidence into the round hole of science. But the loch refuses to yield its secrets easily. It absorbs every hypothesis and remains silent. The mystery is a reflection of our own need to believe in the unknown. The tourism industry around Loch Ness has turned the monster into a friendly cartoon character. Gift shops sell plush toys and green hats with googly eyes to visitors. This commercialization masks the true nature of the legend and the fear it once inspired. Underneath the veneer of souvenir shops lies a deep-seated primal dread. The locals who grew up with the stories know that the loch is not a theme park. It is a dangerous body of water that claims lives every year. The cold water does not give up its dead easily. The monster is a symbol of the lethal power of nature. Urquhart Castle stands as a ruin on a promontory overlooking the deepest part of the loch. It has been a site of bloodshed and siege for hundreds of years. The castle walls have witnessed the rise and fall of clans and the passing of armies. It is also the site of more sightings than any other location on the loch. The view from the Grant Tower offers a panoramic sweep of the dark water. Visitors often stand there, scanning the surface, hoping for a ripple. The juxtaposition of the ruined fortress and the ancient beast creates a Gothic atmosphere. It is a place where the past refuses to die. There is a pervasive feeling of being watched when one is out on the water alone. Kayakers and boaters often report a sensation of unease that has no logical explanation. It is a primal instinct that alerts prey to the presence of a predator. The hair on the back of the neck stands up and the heart rate increases. The vastness of the water makes a human being feel small and vulnerable. Every shadow beneath the boat becomes a potential threat. This psychological pressure is part of the loch's defense mechanism. It keeps intruders in a state of heightened anxiety. The skeptics argue that the monster is a mix of windrows and boat wakes and wishful thinking. They claim that pareidolia causes people to see faces and shapes in random patterns. They point out that in the age of smartphones, there is still no clear video evidence. But this skepticism fails to account for the consistency of the reports over centuries. People from all walks of life, including police officers and doctors, have seen the same thing. They describe a creature that defies the known catalogue of British wildlife. To dismiss all these witnesses as deluded is to ignore the weight of human testimony. Some researchers have proposed that the monster is a tulpa, or a thought form created by collective belief. This paranormal theory suggests that intense concentration can manifest a physical entity. If enough people believe in the monster, it becomes real on some level of reality. This would explain why the creature changes shape and appearance over the decades. It mirrors the expectations of the era, from a water horse to a dinosaur. The loch acts as a psychic amplifier for the fears and dreams of humanity. It is a mirror that reflects our own monsters back at us. The hunt for Nessie is also a story about the limits of human knowledge. We have mapped the surface of Mars and explored the deepest ocean trenches. Yet a lake in the middle of Scotland continues to baffle us. It reminds us that there are still dark corners of the planet that remain illuminated. The monster represents the ultimate anomaly that science cannot categorize. It is a chaotic element in an ordered world. This is why the story endures and captures new generations. We secretly hope that magic and mystery still exist. Imagine being a diver tasked with recovering a lost object from the bottom of the loch. You descend alone into the freezing water with only the sound of your regulator breathing. The light fades quickly until you are enveloped in total darkness. You switch on your torch, but the beam only illuminates the silt directly in front of you. You are suspended in a void with no sense of direction. Suddenly, you feel a displacement of water, as if a massive object has passed nearby. The pressure wave hits you in the chest and knocks the wind out of you. You spin around, but see nothing but the swirling black particles. The panic sets in immediately as your primitive brain screams at you to flee. You realize that you are an intruder in a domain where you do not belong. You imagine the giant mouth opening behind you in the darkness. You begin to ascend, too quickly risking the bends in your desperation to reach the light. The water feels heavy and oppressive, as if it is trying to hold you down. Breaking the surface feels like being reborn into the world of the living. You scramble into the boat, shaking uncontrollably and gasping for air. You know that something was down there with you. This fear is what keeps the legend alive in the hearts of those who visit. It is not just about seeing a dinosaur, but about confronting the abyss. The loch is a canvas upon which we project our deepest anxieties about the unknown. The monster is the embodiment of the darkness that surrounds us and is inside us. It is the thing that bumps in the night and the shadow under the bed. It serves a necessary function in the human psyche. We need monsters to define our own humanity and safety. The scientific expeditions will continue with better sonar and more cameras. They will map the bottom and analyze the DNA and scan the water column. But it is likely that the loch will keep its secrets hidden in the peat. The creature, whether flesh and blood or spirit, and shadow, knows how to survive. It has outlasted the Picts and the Vikings and the modern tourists. It is patient, and it is part of the landscape itself. The monster is the soul of the loch and cannot be separated from it. As the sun sets over the great glen, the shadows lengthen and the water turns to ink. The tourists board their buses and head back to the safety of the hotels. The castle ruins fall silent, and the birds settle into the trees. The loch is left alone with its ghosts and its ancient guardian. A ripple disturbs the calm surface near the center of the lake. A dark shape rises briefly and then slips back under without a sound. The mystery lies beneath the Scottish loch, waiting for the next believer. The lingering dread of Loch Ness is not that we might find the monster. The true horror lies in the possibility that the monster might find us. It suggests that there are predators in this world that view us as nothing more than prey. The dark water is a reminder that civilization is a thin veneer over a savage planet. When you look into the loch, you are looking into the eye of a history that is red in tooth and claw. And somewhere in that cold black depth, something is looking back.